Hello followers, Vitis22 here. If you have a scary story you'd like to feature on the channel, send it in at vitis22stories@gmail.com. Link in description. Now, on to the video. It was one last hurrah for our friend, Brett. Out of the four of us, all lifelong friends, he was the first to get married, and we decided to celebrate by hiking and camping deeper into the Montana wilderness than we or any other humans in recent history had ever been. Despite being in our early 20s and fresh out of college at the time, we were all experienced outdoorsmen and had hiked and camped close to this area many times before. On the paper map, the unspoiled area just appeared as a vast green forest with no human roads or trails. But a recent satellite image, though slightly obstructed by clouds, showed a large natural lake about 500 yards in width. This is where we decided to camp. Looking back, we had all teased each other since childhood during sleepovers and campouts about bumps in the night, sounds we couldn't explain. We shouldn't have been so concerned about the supposed supernatural that never bothered us. Reality was much, much more terrifying. Before we left, I researched to see if other people had run into any trouble in recent years. One young couple on their honeymoon went missing without a trace, never being found. It was tragic, but not unusual. The oddest thing I found was what happened to hikers' dogs along the trails. Several people reported their dogs suddenly acting uneasy and scared, barking at the forest. After they camped for the night, the dogs would be missing in the morning. Oh well, probably wolves or bears, I thought, at least until I read one small detail on an old blog created for the missing pets. At least until I read one small detail on an old blog created for the missing pets. After the dogs went missing, the hikers reported feeling like they were being watched. As they hiked back, they all heard what sounded like pigs squealing in the distance. There weren't any feral hogs in this part of the country. So fast forward to where we finally got to our destination. Joe, Dave, Brett, and I had driven as far up the trail as we could before it became too narrow. So we parked and hid the truck. From there, we hiked with our gear for 5 miles before taking a deer trail to the west, which ran parallel to a large creek. It went another 5 miles before the creek emptied into the lake. The sun was already setting, so we decided to set up camp right there, at an inlet of the lake. With steep bluffs rising up on either side of the lake shore. The view was great, with a full moon shining on the water and illuminating the open area around us. But the other side of the lake just looked like dense, black forest. Even though we had laughed and joked loudly on the hike, here we spoke quietly and built our fire with some bushes between us and the lake. We didn't want to advertise our presence to bears, wolves, angry bull moose, or people either. It wasn't unusual to find illegal marijuana grows, even meth labs way out here. Because of these dangers, we were all armed. Brett and I with large caliber handguns, and Joe and Dave with shotguns. We were all just starting to get tired, sitting around the fire when we heard the voices. They spoke in a loud tone and sounded like they couldn't have been more than 50 feet away from us. The first one sounded like a boy.
"Mommy, I'm so hungry. Can I kill some of them and eat them?"
Then came a woman's voice.
"Not right now, son. It's not time yet." "When, Mommy?" "Right at dawn, when everyone is sleeping the heaviest. You'll help me with our fresh kill. We'll gut them, fillet them, and then cook them over the fire. If you're good, I'll let you catch and kill one, and you can eat him fresh
The boy yelled.
Yeoman.
My friends and I first stared back and forth at each other. Our faces had all paled. We had all heard it. Joe leaned in and whispered, "We've got to leave now. Pack up and go. The moon should be enough light. I don't know what this is, but I'm not going to find out." Brett, the scientist and therefore most logical member of the group, shook his head. "No, guys, there's a logical..." Dave, usually the quiet one, interrupted in a hoarse whisper. "Are you kidding me, Brett? Look around you. Those voices were close, no more than 50 feet. We're in a clearing and there's no one within 50 feet. Now everyone looked at me. I was the most experienced outdoorsman, and I shook my head. You both got a point. My family's from Appalachia. I heard of something like this. They, whatever they are, can't get to you at your camp or your home, so they scare you to make you leave it. We should stick around until morning, keep our backs to the fire and guns up. Joe and Dave take the first half of the night, and then Brett and I will wake up and take the second half. We'll all be too tired to do anything if we don't get any rest." Joe rolled his eyes, like I'm going to sleep after that. Brett spoke. "Actually, you will. Once the adrenaline wears off and the exhaustion hits you, you'll be dead to the world. Since you and Dave are obviously more wired right now, you guys go first. Wake us up if anything happens." Brett had been right. We were all agitated, but when sleep came, it came hard. I woke up at 3 a.m. for my shift. I downed a mug of cold, black coffee to wake me up. We had our gear packed and ready to leave in a haste at the crack of dawn. When the sun's light finally crested the horizon, I looked out at the lake. I almost laughed at what I saw. My friends looked at me, puzzled. I nodded and they followed my gaze. There, about 200 yards off, was a small island with a small cabin by the shore. We hadn't seen it the night before because it was blended in with the opposite shore after dark. We just watched far off as the mother and boy carried a line full of fish, or fresh kill as they called it, around the back of the cabin. The sound that seemed so close now made sense. Sound carries across a lake like someone is standing right next to you. To boot, the bluffs on either side of the inlet funneled the sound right to us. Brett shook his head and laughed. "I can't believe it. See? Always a logical explanation. Man, do we have a story to tell when we get back home." Joe still seemed unsettled about something. Why did she tell the kid he could kill one and eat it fresh? Who talks like that? Suddenly, we heard the boy talk as he and his mother came back around the cabin.
"Mother, I know we came out here to meet them, but why do I have to marry my cousin when I grow up?"
The mother hissed like a cat.
"Because, dear, of the outsiders. They would hate us. They would make us change the way we live, in harmony with nature by the water. We have done it this way for over 100 years, to preserve our way of life. Anyway, forget about that. It's time for you to catch and eat a fresh kill, young one."
By now, we had all dug into our pockets for our binoculars. Nothing could have prepared us for what we saw. The boy hopped up on a large rock like a frog on all fours, wearing only a pair of shorts apparently made from moose or elk hide. The mother wore similarly made shorts and a shirt, their faces looking disfigured and flat, with abnormally large eyes and mouths. Their teeth were all filed down to sharp points like a shark. Their large backs caused them to stand humped forward. They had unusually large arms, hands, and fingers, and their feet were long and flat. The boy lurched into the water and came back up with a large fish in his mouth. He grabbed on with both hands and tore into the belly with his razor teeth, slinging blood and guts as the fish flailed helplessly. Dave couldn't take seeing anymore. He bent over and vomited loudly. The mother and boy simultaneously looked up at us. the mother yelled.
Outsiders.
They both pointed their faces in the air and let out a blood-curdling scream that sounded like a pig squealing. The door to the cabin flew open and 5 bigger, similarly disfigured males leapt out. They all wore only hide shorts, short spears slung into leather pouches on their backs, and belts that had what looked like several knives and tomahawks each. They looked at us, then dove headlong into the water, swimming towards us just under the surface, at a speed faster than I'd ever seen a human being swim. Dave and Joe had been grabbing their packs this whole time. I yelled as I grabbed a small bag with maps, a compass, and emergency equipment. Leave the gear, take the weapons and water, run. As we fled up the deer trail, I yelled back at my friends. Stick to the trail and stay together no matter what. Watch your footing. Holler and tell us if you see them. Keep the guns prone, fingers off the trigger. We ran as fast as we could for 3 miles without stopping. Out of breath, we finally rested a minute and sipped water in stunned silence. Joe finally spoke. What are they? Brett said what I was thinking, but was too disturbed to say. Several generations of inbreeding causing the disfigurement. Those with features that helped them swim and catch fish survived and passed the traits to their offspring. Now I spoke my concern. The kids said they were just visiting. I wonder how many of them there... I was interrupted by a sound from the creek running alongside the trail. Brett's eyes widened. They're swimming after us. Just as I saw 2 glints of metal coming from the middle of the creek, I pulled Brett aside. A short spear and a tomahawk sunk into a tree where his head had just been. Then we heard a gurgling voice from the creek. All outsiders must die. Now I knew. There was no negotiating or just scaring us. It was a fight to the death. We all fired our guns into the creek, and they disappeared. I took a knee. I'll cover us, you guys run. Then someone cover me. We'll leapfrog out of here. As the others ran, I took position behind a tree for cover. I heard the apparent leader of the group of lake people, I guess I'll call them, yell an order to one of their men. Go up the tributary. Rally the other communities. Communities? I couldn't let this happen. I saw a figure under the water start to shoot up a breach in the creek. I took careful aim and fired several rounds, then a painful scream, followed by blood and a body floating to the surface. Then the body came back to life and kicked up the creek branch, albeit slower than before. Suddenly, one of them lurched out of the water, grabbed onto a tree branch with long arms, and swung himself like a gymnast onto the ground. He landed, running right towards me. I didn't shoot at first, wanting to conserve my ammo. He threw a knife and a tomahawk bolt sinking into the tree I was using for cover. I was surprised at first how fast he ran, but then he slowly slowed and his lungs heaved like he was getting tired. Now I fired 3 shots into his chest. He kept coming. He yanked out a spear and prepared to throw it, this time at my head. There was a new hole right between his eyes, and he slammed into the ground at my feet, dead. I prepared to retreat as 2 of them rose from the water, tomahawks raised. Bullets began littering the water. Brett was covering my escape. One of them took a round to its thick neck. He grabbed at it and spit blood as he died. The other, larger than all of them, and evidently the leader, squealed in anger as he dove into the water. Thanks, I yelled as I ran by Brett. A minute later, we caught up to Joe and Dave. We all moved at a jogging pace. I explained what happened. Dave, who had been a zoologist major, spoke. They're like alligators. They can leap, swim, and even run faster than any of us. But they tire after a short distance on land. I nodded. They stick to the water. A river runs along the hiking trail, and they evidently kept guards along there, taking people's dogs and making noises to scare people off. We must have slipped past the guards by taking the deer trail. Then I remembered something. Where's the 5th one? Brett and I killed 2. A third, the leader, jumped back into the water, and I injured the 4th going to get reinforcements. Just then, The fifth one leapt out of the creek ahead of us, tomahawk in hand. We all jumped off the trail into the trees. As he threw it, it deflected off a tree and gashed Dave's left bicep badly. Brett and I fired several rounds that hit him as he charged us, but he only stopped when Joe fired his shotgun, landing buckshot dead center in its chest, eviscerating its heart and lungs. It flopped to the ground like a fish. "Oh yeah," I said. "They also don't stop until they're dead." I knew I had made a tough call that violated a cardinal rule of hikers: stick to the trail. We left the trail and moved uphill, keeping southeast towards our truck. Since there were streams and tributaries all through the forest, elevation was our friend, and the only way to avoid the lake people. Mainly, we knew we had to escape before the reinforcements caught us. That would be game over. I began to wonder, didn't the lake people ever have normal children? Were they all deformed? A sudden crunch beneath my feet gave me the sickening answer. There were dozens of perfectly normal-looking baby skeletons scattered all over the forest floor. Brett spoke. "This must be what they're doing with the normal babies. I guess they consider them to be like the outsiders." My fist clenched as I felt rage course through my veins. Before, I was only defending myself and my friends. Now I'd be more than happy to kill every one of those animals. I took out my phone and took pictures, explaining to the others. Someone needs to document this, so we can prove what happens out here. Once we got to the ridge, Brett sewed up Dave's arm, and I powered up a sat phone that had been with the emergency equipment I had grabbed on the way out of camp. There was no use calling 911 out here. Only the direct number for search and rescue. I knew everyone there since I often volunteered when someone went missing. When the other end answered, I heard a female voice and I started talking right away. "Jill, it's me, Alex. Listen, we're on the ridge 2 miles west of the hiking trail." I went on to explain that we were attacked by men with tomahawks, spears, and knives, but left out the description, not wanting to sound crazy. "Dave is injured. We're low on water, and we can't go to the water because those people follow the water. We're trying to get to our truck, but they have people on the trail. We might need a helicopter evac." The line went silent for a second before Jill spoke. "Alex, someone found your truck this morning. It had been destroyed. Someone ripped out wires and smashed the engine block." My heart sank in my chest. I thought a minute. It must have been the lake people's trail guards. They discovered the truck, saw that we slipped past them, and destroyed it. That meant that regardless of the reinforcements, they were already looking for us. And they were out for blood. I heard a whisper in the background of the call. "Tomahawk and spear injuries. That's consistent with how we found that couple." That couple? They supposedly were never found. Suddenly, I realized that Jill and the SAR team knew more than they were saying. Jill spoke. "Alex, there are rules about no vehicles out there for a reason. Usually hikers are scared off, but apparently you and your knuckle-headed friends are the only outsiders." I snapped. "Outsiders? That's their term. You know everything, don't you? Did you know they kill babies born normal? These flippered freaks are murderers, and you're covering for them. Well, never mind. We'll go through whatever debrief and non-disclosure nonsense you want us to do later, but you should know they're getting reinforcements and they're coming for us. Oh yeah, and after they went all homicidal on us, we killed 3 of them in self-defense, before you go blaming us. So either way, it's a war unless you come get us." There was silence for a while. Finally, I heard another voice. This one was Jill's boss. "Boy, you really have a way with diplomacy, don't you, Alex? Alright, we'll get you. Only because I owe you boys for finding my niece alive out there, and this story would be a media shitstorm. We've got your GPS, just get us an LZ. We'll be airborne in 20, and another 15 miles of flight time." I breathed out a sigh of relief as I pulled out a topographical map and unfolded it. We needed to keep moving for these 35 minutes, or we'd be sitting ducks. Besides the fact that there was too much tree cover to establish a landing zone, I found a clearing that I estimated about a 30-minute hike away to give us 5 minutes to spare. Once the chopper was on the ground, it would draw the lake people, so it would have to be a rapid exfiltration. I gave them the coordinates and hung up. Suddenly, to our north, we heard a distant scream. Then to our east. Brett looked at me. The guards and the reinforcements, both of them, they're communicating to each other and they're closing in. I looked at my best friends. They were determined and strong. They were also looking at me. Guns hot, heads on a swivel. Stay frosty, brothers. We started moving at twice the pace I calculated and got to the LZ 15 minutes early. We hunkered down and camouflaged ourselves with local foliage. Dave and Joe topped off their shotguns and Brett and I reloaded our handguns with fresh magazines. We heard bushes rustling. One of the lake people walked out of the tree line, grunting and sniffing the air. He looked different from the others, more normal. Still hunched over, but with regular feet and a massive nose. Dave whispered, "They have land people. This guy's got a giant nose that can smell us, and he doesn't get tired on solid ground easily. He's a land scout." Dave raised his shotgun, but I stopped him. "You fire that too early, and it's over. I'll take care of him." I took a deep breath and jumped out of the tree line. "Hey, did your mom just slap you a lot, or did you get that ugly face from her?" Angered, the scout threw his spear with surprising force. I ducked and rolled just as it landed where I had been standing. I grabbed the spear and got back inside the tree line, charging at the scout. He threw tomahawks and knives at me, which all stuck in the trees. As I got close, he leapt several feet in the air and landed on a tree branch, then lunged down at me. I planted the spear on the ground and it plunged into his chest as he landed. He gurgled as blood filled his lungs. He grabbed the spear, shoved himself through it to get closer to me, as his other hand reached for one last knife in his belt. I looked him in the eyes. They don't stop until they're dead. I flicked open my pocket knife and jammed it into his left temple, through his deformed skull and into his brain. His look of surprise barely registered before he was dead. At first I thought the thumping I had heard was my rapid heartbeat, but I quickly realized the helicopter was nearing the LZ. I left the deformed creature slumped against his spear and ran silently to rejoin my friends. Just as the helicopter landed, we ran from cover. Out of the tree line on two sides, the lake people started to converge on us, screaming their wretched squeal, many of them heaving as they struggled to breathe. The tallest one, the leader, threw a tomahawk. It bounced off the ground and struck Brett in the arm. We both pointed our pistols back and fired as we ran. Rescuers from the chopper also fired their weapons, and the lake people began dropping. We jumped on the open side of the helicopter. The leader leapt towards us like a giant frog. I shot him several times with my gun as he reared back his spear to throw. One round caught his arm and slowed the throw a bit. The spear caught one of the rescuers in the calf of his leg, and he screamed. Brett grabbed Joe's shotgun and, yelling from the pain of his injured arm as he hoisted it, blasted a load of 12-gauge buckshot squarely into the fish freak's chest. As he fell dead to the ground and we lifted off, we could hear a collective cry from the lake people. Brett collapsed from exhaustion and relief as the shotgun clattered to the floor. "All right. Now I'm going to go get married." That was a few years ago. The government supposedly got better at dealing with the lake people after the evidence we showed them and what we told them. They somehow sterilized them so they wouldn't have any more children. The unnatural madness would end. They also blocked public access to the area, calling it a military base. So, why share this story, you might ask? We, as human beings, are curious by our very nature. We want to get back to the nature we came from, reconnect. We just have to turn over the unturned stone to see what's underneath, unprepared for the nasty dirt and bugs we are disgusted by when we look. Occasionally, nature will warn us to stay away, leave the rock unturned. Sometimes it may steal your dog or scare you with unfamiliar noises. We foolishly respond with curiosity and attempt to investigate. But sometimes, it's a warning that we can't handle what's under the rock. Sometimes it's warning you to stay away and just let nature be.